Hello, everyone. Welcome to Onion Soup, the show where we pull back the layers of metaphysics and reality to demystify spirituality. Today, we have with us Kevin Burk. And Kevin's background is in astrology, but he created a philosophy around what he calls the human game. How are you doing today, Mr. Kevin?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing wonderful. So I just want to dive right into it. Ed. What is the human game?
The human game is a philosophy based on the idea that the universe is made up of stories. So, story is the smallest practical unit of reality. And this is not my original idea. It's actually is a line from a poem from the 1960s called I want to say, The Speed of Darkness. That the universe is not made of is made of stories, not of atoms. But I've actually taken that and gone, okay, what does that mean? How do stories work? Because if that's true, when you understand how stories work, you can understand anything.
What do you mean by how stories work? So when I think about stories, I do love to write as well, which I feel like a lot of people don't know.
Mhm. Yeah.
I usually focus on the idea of the hero's journey. So are most of our stories like the hero's journey?
The hero's journey is a particular kind of story. Um, but when I talk about how stories work, I'm talking about literally just the mechanic, because that's a big, complex story.
Hmm.
And just literally what defines the patterns of a story. So, one of the really critical elements of the human game is recognizing that, okay, the story that we experience, because human beings understand everything in terms of story. I mean, just literally, we love story. We're hardwired for story. Story is how we understand literally everything. The reality that you experience is the composite story. So it's like a television signal is actually made up of three channels. It's got the red, the green, and the blue. So the human game story matrix takes that composite story and breaks it up into the three levels of story. There's the plot level story, the
Hmm.
character level story, and the theme level story. And each of these story levels is its own story. So the plot level story is the external events.
Hmm.
It's the objective sequence. It's I call it just the facts, ma'am, is the title.
Hmm.
So it's what happened. The character level story is your personal experience. It is actually your reality. It's your story. So it's what happened to me. How do I feel about it? Because everything about the character level story is really your reality. It's your sense of identity and what you feel, and that's it.
Hmm.
And then the theme level story is the spiritual, the archetypal, the symbolic. It's what connects you as a sense of an individual to the universe.
Hmm.
And we have basically no creative control over the plot level story. You didn't create the external world.
Hmm.
You can't, try as you might, you can't control everything. A lot of times you can't control anything. And that doesn't matter
Hmm.
because we don't really care about the external world. All we care about is how we feel.
Hmm.
That's literally it. Human beings, we care about how we feel. We care about feeling better, and our motivation, basically, our programming is avoid pain, pursue pleasure. But everything is about how do I feel.
Hmm.
And so, on the character level story, you've got a lot of creative control. You don't have to change the external events in the plot level story. You can change how you feel about them. And then the theme level story, you've got absolute creative control, and that's the good news. And the bad news is you have absolute creative control over the theme level story because it's any writer will tell you scariest thing in the universe is a blank page,
Right.
and that's pretty much what's going on with the theme level story. But just recognizing, I mean, we begin the human game. People come into the human game. Really, the first thing you're learning is how to separate the plot level story from the character level story,
Mm-hmm.
because that helps you to solve the happiness problem,
Mm-hmm.
and really differentiate between a problem and an obstacle. So, an obstacle is anything that stands between you and an external goal. Anything that stands between you and something you want is an obstacle. A problem is anything that interferes with your happiness.
Okay.
So, problems exist in the character level story because something about this is affecting how I feel. And when you learn to separate out, because you can't change the composite story,
Mm-hmm.
but when you learn to separate out, oh, I'm going to make some adjustments in the character level story. So this obstacle in the plot level story is no longer a problem. I don't have to accept those conditions, but they're not going to mess with my happiness. So I can still want to change things. I can still want to create stuff. I can still have goals. But whether or not I get what I want has nothing to do with whether or not I feel happy.
So is the obstacle in like the plot level and being the plot with the plot level being the external reality, like you said, and the character level being
Yes.
your internal and the way that you walk through life,
Yes.
right? So is the actual obstacle realize that you need to let go or trying to let go of that plot level?
Well, you're taking the story and making it the story about story. So it can be, but broadly, we're dealing with just literally a framework of reality.
Mm,
And so every story has three acts. Every plot level story starts out act one, there's a goal,
mm,
something that something you want to accomplish, something that is wrong with your current world that needs to be changed. And in Act One, you decide what the goal is, and then you set off in pursuit of the goal.
mhm,
Act Two is the obstacle. There's always an obstacle. Stories aren't story. They're not. There's no story if there's no obstacle. So something interferes with your ability to achieve the goal. And you must deal with the obstacle, and sometimes that will change how you're pursuing the goal. And then Act Three is the resolution. You either achieve the goal or you don't. The plot level story is it's an important structure. It's how we can identify the shape of a story. And it's also really unsatisfying.
mm,
I mean, it's accurate, but I mean, the plot level of the Lord of the Rings is a bunch of friends get together and take a road trip to dispose of a piece of jewelry.
mhm,
That's accurate, but it does not begin to describe what's actually happening there. And so, what's actually happening is the character level story, what you're
mhm,
experiencing versus this external shape of things. But we believe, because we operate with the composite story, we think that things in the outside world affect how we feel.
mhm,
And when you can realize, oh no, no, the plot level story is the external conditions. Character level story is what really matters. And yes, there can be a relationship between the two, and getting what you want is fun, but it doesn't necessarily make you happy. And so part of what you can learn when you play the human game is how to actually maintain and build a foundation of happiness, how to meet your needs and be happy regardless of what's going on in the outside world. So you can have fun going after what you want, playing these plot level games, and you can't lose. Because if you get what you want, great. You get a little bonus.
Mhm.
If you don't get what you want, it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't mess with your happiness because those obstacles are no longer problems.
So what do you mean by happiness? Like, are we designing our own goals, or
Okay.
are we just overcome the obstacles as they appear in our life?
Okay. I have a very specific and I've got a whole story to justify and process this out. But the definition within the human game of happiness. Happiness is the feeling you experience when you are free from want and free from need.
Mm,
This is so I talk about the first step in the human game is the quest for happiness, and you're building a foundation of happiness because you want to get your happily ever after and be done with it so you can get on with your life. Happiness isn't the end of the story. Happily ever after isn't the end of your story. It just means your story continues ever after and you don't have to worry about happiness anymore. So happiness doesn't necessarily feel good. Happiness just means you no longer feel bad.
mm.
And by comparison, that's a big deal because most people are driven by their wants and their needs. But you get to happiness and it's, I have options. I don't have to do anything. So I get to choose what I might enjoy. And that's a big transformation. But so much of our lives are spent in the pursuit of happiness, and we're trying to change the external conditions. And then we're trying to take these spiritual truths and apply them directly from the theme level and apply them directly to the plot level, which does not work. Um, and and we think we got to change the external conditions, and it's like, oh, this is all the things you know, all the things you learned about spirituality, all that stuff is accurate. All that stuff exists, and it's story, but everything is story. But understanding where it fits, understanding, oh, that's theme level, and I can't just take these theme level principles. I can't use the law of attraction, for example, which is absolutely universal law.
Mhm,
Absolutely, how reality is created, in fact, is vibration and the law of attraction.
mhm.
But that's a theme level, impersonal, great big thing. And what happens is people hear about the law of attraction and they try to apply it directly to the plot level, which is I'm going to envision the BMW.
Mhm.
And yes, I'm going to think about how good I feel when I think about the BMW, but then they lose track of the fact that the point isn't the BMW, the point is the good feeling, because that's the win, is feeling good. And you don't need the BMW and the plot level to have the good feeling that you feel when you're creating the BMW using the law of attraction. Because if you feel good, you're happy in the moment. That's the point. And then yes, it is entirely possible once you feel those feelings and are enjoying those feelings and are tuned into that frequency. Yeah, sometimes the BMW or something like it will show up in the plot level story, but it doesn't have to
It
because
sounds
that's
like
what happiness is.
it sounds like it's a constant pursuit of happiness, but in the constant pursuit of happiness, you're never really truly happy. Like, you have to find
Well,
happiness and be happy with
well,
yourself.
and we're pursuing happiness, and it's not that the pursuit of happiness is an issue. It's that we're looking for it in the wrong place.
Mm,
We're looking for it in the plot level story, and it's a feeling. So it lives inside you. But we also don't have a framework for how to look inside. I mean, getting what you want doesn't make you happy.
mm,
It doesn't. But getting what you want doesn't prevent you from being happy. Getting what you want is fun.
yeah.
But, and I've always, you still want everything you've ever wanted. But getting everything you've ever wanted isn't necessarily going to make you happy because it has nothing to do with happiness. So my approach is, well, let me help you get everything you ever wanted and also be happy. They're two separate things, but
Yeah.
they're not incompatible. So
Basically, how happiness and getting what you want. Happiness has nothing to do with the material world. It's all about inner self.
because it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It lives inside you. So happiness is part of the character level story because it's a
Mhm,
feeling. External goals, accomplishments, getting what you want in the outside world, that's fun.
mhm,
Fun. So I mean, I differentiate kind of fun, happiness, and joy. Fun is plot level, happiness is character level, joy is basically theme level.
mhm.
And fun, it's like the chocolate sprinkles on the ice cream sundae. I mean, somebody asked, "Would you like fun with that?" The answer is always sure, but on its own, it's not that great. I mean, it's not that satisfying. Happiness is what we care about, and you can always have fun at the plot level, and that's part of what you learn when you play the human game. Is that okay? This may not be particularly enjoyable at this moment in this story for my character. Still a great story. I can look at my story from the audience and go, wow, that's amazing. And as the character experiencing it, it's like, this is hell. This is a challenge. This is miserable right now. And then the audience, just the popcorn's, oh my God, how's he going to get out of this? This is so exciting. Um, but even at that point, you can find the fun.
Mhm.
So fun doesn't necessarily feel good, but it's better than not.
I feel like I like what you're saying about the fun aspect being plot, being the external world. So physical things can be fun. Having a
Oh,
new
yeah, they're
car,
gross. They're great.
it's always fun to get a new car, right?
Yeah,
But after a while, you realize that having the new car isn't what makes you happy. Nobody and nothing can make you happy. You get to the
exactly.
character level, like you're saying, happiness is internal.
Yeah.
But once you get to more of the universal idea of this, that's where the joy comes in. Because joy is a state of being, and that's that bliss level of state. That kind of summed that up a little bit.
Yes, and joy is a frequency of consciousness.
Yes.
Joy is something bigger than you personally. Joy is something when you connect to a bigger, more profound level of universal truth.
Mhm.
It becomes and that's what we're looking for. Joy feels amazing.
Right.
Happy doesn't suck. Happy doesn't feel necessarily good, but it doesn't feel bad. Joy feels amazing. Joy is what we're really looking for.
Yeah.
But again, we see the composite story, and so much of that appears to be outside of us, and we think I have to change conditions in the outside world to somehow create these feelings inside of me.
Mm.
And that's not entirely how it works. And also, you can't really change the composite story, but you can make changes to the character level story. You can absolutely make changes to the theme level story. And that will affect your reality. That will transform how you experience your reality.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's really challenging to I mean, you can't control what somebody else does. You can't control the outside world, but you
Oh, yeah.
can control how you respond to it. You can control your own emotions. So we're
Yes.
gonna take a really quick commercial break.
Okay.
See you in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. So we were talking a lot about how you can't control the external world, but you can control the internal world, and in turn bring yourself to a higher state of consciousness and vibration. Now,
Yes.
as we talk about the human game, you talk about it like it's more than just philosophy. This is something that you actually offer as a course.
Yes. Well, and I twist myself into knots to not use any language calling it a course because I mean, it looks like a class and it quacks like a class, but it's really not a class.
Okay.
But I have something called the human game experience.
Mm,
And, the human game is the philosophy. The human game experience is an astrology based reality role playing game that can give you creative control over the story of your life. So it is an 8-week online program where it combines sort of video tutorials, and there's a comprehensive player's handbook, and you're posting gameplay objectives in a private bulletin board and getting coaching from me, and you've got a community you're interacting with, and I'm taking you by the hand and walking you through the quest for happiness. So you start by getting familiar with sort of the shape of stories, and you learn how to kind of spot the plot in your own stories. And then you learn how to lower the stakes of your stories, because games are only fun if the stakes are low. When life is too serious, if the stakes are high, if you can lose, it's not fun. And then we start looking at the happiness problem. And what I present in these stories is that all you need to be happy, to maintain the foundation of happiness, you need to meet your safety needs and you need to meet your validation needs. And these are character level, so we're going to learn how to do this with stories. And we're going to use astrology to do that. So astrology operates at the theme level. Astrology is entirely symbolic. So very, very powerful, but also you can't just immediately connect it to the plot level. That's why, the frustration that so many people have with astrology when it feels vague, it's because you're trying to connect a theme level symbolic concept directly to the plot level story.
Mm.
And you can't do that. It's got to go through the character level story.
So how do you use astrology? Can you give us a quick example? I'm a Taurus.
Okay.
So
Well, and what we're doing in the human game is totally different from what you think of in terms of popular astrology, because it's not about your sun sign. When you say you're a Taurus, you mean your sun is in Taurus.
so it's like your rising and your moon, is that what we're talking about? Or the train?
We're specifically, all we're doing in the human game, we're going to be ultimately playing with a little bit of it, because a little bit of astrology goes a long way.
Mm.
You really don't need to know all of the things about what this says about your personality. You want to learn, how can I use this like now to feel better? So the first thing we look at is your moon, because the moon relates to your safety needs. And one of the things that I realized that led to developing the human game was that it doesn't really make any sense to interpret the signs. The planets do everything, and the signs sort of tell you, they describe how the planet functions. But the signs combine two separate things. They combine one of 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water, and one of 3 modalities: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And the element and the modality answer different questions. The modality tells you how you do something, the element tells you which language you speak, and you don't get anything extra by trying to combine them together. And in fact, it makes it harder to understand, how do I get something practical out of this? So when you start working with the moon in about week 4, I give you, based on your chart, the components of the first part of what I call your happiness GPS. So you're learning how to make deposits in your safety need account separate from engaging with the outside world. And you do that with these stories. So the modality of your moon, whether it's cardinal, fixed, or mutable, tells you how you approach safety. So cardinal is team hair. So you have a cardinal goal, it's a sprint. You leaps and bounds, the goal is an archery target, you have to hit it with a single arrow. So that's a particular approach that you're always going to take to those goals. And there are strategies and challenges and obstacles that you can anticipate and go, oh, yeah, I need to move that target closer. Fixed is Team Tortoise. If you take a fixed approach to a goal, the race is a marathon. So it's all about managing your resources, and you've literally got an internal accounting department and a great big bureaucracy and targets that need to be hit. And so any kind of forget any kind of change. I'm sorry, we got paperwork. You want to make a change here? We've got paperwork to go through. Do not mess with my routine here. And then mutable is Team Hummingbird.
Hmm.
If you have a mutable approach to a goal, the race is a scavenger hunt.
Interesting.
It's not about reaching the finish line, it's about checking all of the items off the to-do list. And you can sort of do that in any order.
Hmm.
So, three different ways that you may specifically approach safety. And you're going to look at that and you're going to play with that story on one day of that week. And then the next day, you're going to look at the element of your moon. What language do you speak for safety? If the moon is in a fire sign, you need to take action to feel safe. If
Wow.
it's in an earth sign, safety is tangible, physical, structured. If it's in an air sign, you need the words. You need to understand it intellectually. If it's in a water sign, it's a feeling.
Wow.
And
I
you're
think
going to
that's
learn
all.
how to play with that and experience, oh, yeah, I speak a water language for safety. Here's how I can, right now, tell myself this particular story and go out and find some water resources and experience, oh, yeah, I feel a little bit more safe right now because I did this.
Huh.
And then the house tells you where in your life you find safety. So, three different strategies that you're going to play with. And then you do the same thing in a couple of weeks with Venus for your validation needs, but you may have a completely different set of GPS coordinates for how you look for love and appreciation.
Hmm.
And so this is kind of the approach. And then with the role playing thing, I link this a little bit for people that like play Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. The planet that rules your ascendant is your avatar. So that's the character class. We've got 7 possible character classes in the human game. And so my rising sign is Gemini, so my character class is Mercury, which is the archetype of the storyteller.
Huh.
So this is how other people see me. This is also ultimately how I'm going to find my happiness. But other people cast me in their stories as a Mercury character,
Hmm.
whether I feel like that's me or not. And other people expect me to behave in that way.
Wow. That's
And so
that's really interesting. That's a really fun way to look at astrology that I've never heard.
you can do something. I mean, I have been teaching astrology since like 2000. I've been counseling since 1998. I've been studying astrology for more than 30 years. And in all that time, I have been looking for how to get it to do what it always promised it could do and never actually did.
Yeah.
And that's what finally, when I finally came to first of all, realized that I've never been an astrologer. I'm a philosopher because I don't care about astrology for its own sake. I care about the answers astrology is supposed to be able to give.
Yeah.
But the human game, it's like, this is what astrology was supposed to do. I can use this. I
It
can
sounds
play
fun.
with this.
It sounds like a lot of fun, and I'd love to dive deeper into it, but that's all the time we actually have for today. But I really do want to thank you so much, Mr. Kevin, for coming on and talking about the human game. And for
Thank you.
everybody watching, go check this out. Sounds like fun. I'm gonna check it
Thank you. Yeah. And if you go to playthehumangame.com, there's a whole bunch of videos. There's a lot of information about the human game experience. And there's also a free human game introduction class, which is a series of videos that occasionally get posted elsewhere, but mainly are there. That will give you a little taste of all of the different things that you can do with the human game. So there's a lot of free information, and then there's also the human game experience that I offer a couple of times a year. And come play; it's a lot of fun.
Sounds amazing. But thank you again for coming on, and thank you
Thank you.
everybody for tuning in and watching today. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too.